welcome back to my channel, Susie Jane Designs. In today's video, we are going to be making this. This is a DIY pallet planter. Let me start by saying I am not a professional in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to show you guys how I made this. I also made another one for my mother for Mother's Day, so I will insert some clips of how that one turned out once it was fully planted, because as you can see, mine is not planted yet. But it should have been in the thumbnail when you clicked on it. You saw it. You guys got it. Let's go ahead and jump into making this planter.
Okay guys, so this is kind of the idea that we were going with here. We're taking a skinny pallet and we're adding some 2x4s to make legs. Now in the example I showed you, I ended up putting the legs for that particular one up higher. But on the one that we're building in this video, I went with some shorter legs just to see if I liked that better. Also, I already had these cut, so it just seemed like the thing to do. Anyway, whatever size you decide to make, however much you want it to be leaning back, whatever angle you want it to be at, whatever pallet you want to use. All pallets are not created equal. So I also am not including measurements in this video because you kind of have to just adjust for the pallet that you're using. Pallets are never straight, and they're never, you know, the same sizes. So you just kind of have to go with what is even for your, and you know what I'm saying here. Sorry about that. So anyway, all I'm doing is I screwed the 2x4s into the pallet at the angle that I wanted them to be. And then I'm actually using these wood yard stakes that we get from Home Depot to add as braces to the bottom of the legs. I didn't show you in the video because I ended up adding it later, but I did go ahead and add a brace piece from on the back there from leg to leg and screwed that in just for a little added stability because I felt like it just needed that extra bit of stability. Anyway, so you are going to go ahead and screw those pieces in, and then I took cedar fence boards and I just held them up and measured it against the pallet. Again, it's not going to be something that is a specific measurement because every pallet is going to be different. So I just measured them and cut them for each section where I wanted to either fill in the front or to add a back piece. Now that'll make more sense in a minute, but you do need to have a back piece for each one of these horizontal slats across the front, and that'll make a little more sense in a second. Okay, so once you get your pieces all cut, you're basically just going to screw them in where you need them to be. So you can see across the back here, I am adding this one right in line with the horizontal piece that's in the front. This piece kind of does double duty. It also adds additional support for those leg pieces. But essentially what we're doing is we're creating a bottomless box for each one of those areas of the pallet. And again, that'll make more sense in a little bit. It's kind of hard to explain, but essentially we're trying to make every horizontal piece look kind of like that top piece does. Okay, so now I'm adding the one across the bottom on the back. I will go back and add another piece in the middle there, you'll see in a second. That one's just a little bit more complicated because of the position of the legs. I didn't quite account for that when I decided to use the shorter legs, so it was a little bit more complicated than the first pallet planter that I made, but it ends up working in the end. Oh, and look at that. There's a princess for you guys. You're welcome. So here's where I'm measuring out those pieces so that that piece for the middle, so I can cut it down to size to be exactly where I need it to be. And then I'm gonna go ahead and attach it to the center post. Now, of course, this wasn't enough stability for creating the box just by screwing it into the center. So I did end up driving some screws in horizontally into the legs, and that went ahead and created just enough support on the sides of the boards that it wouldn't shift as much. Once I finished adding all of the pieces, I went ahead and took our orbital sander and gave everything a good sanding. Now, I wasn't looking for a completely smooth finish. I was just looking to clean it up, get rid of any splinters, anything like that, but I do still want it to be a rough finish. Okay, so once we got everything sanded down as much as I wanted it to be, I'm gonna go ahead and stain it with Jacobian stain. This is one of my favorites. I love the darkness of this. It was about at this point that I realized that I forgot to add the box to the bottom of our pallet planter. So I did go ahead and finish the staining and then added the planter at the bottom. Once I was done with all of that, I just figured since I had it all out anyway, I might as well just do it a little bit backwards. But I would highly recommend that you add the box first. So in the interest of time, I just wanted to go ahead and put my stencils on and show you guys how I did this, just because the stencils were already cut out. So this stencil, I use a stencil vinyl that I get from Amazon. I'll try to link it down below if I remember, honestly. But what I do is I go ahead and adhere the stencil to it, and here's my little helper, and I go ahead and use painter's tape around any of the edges where the letters look a lot closer. And I'm just using white chalk paint by Rust-Oleum. It's called Linen. And I'm just stenciling over. I'm using a sponge brush. Once I get all of the words stenciled on, I allow it to dry before I remove the stencil vinyl and the tape, just because I want to make sure I don't mess anything up. I am an impatient person, so I tend to mess things up if I try to touch them too soon. I'm pretty new to this stencil vinyl, but honestly, I love it. It does a really good job. I don't typically get a lot of bleeding. I did get a little bit on this, but sorry about the shaking of the camera there. It was really windy. So I do get a lot of, I don't get a lot of bleeding, I'm sorry, but I do go in with a Q-tip and just some water because it's chalk paint, and I clean up anywhere that I might have like gone over the stencil. Even though I put tape there, I'm not the cleanest painter. My husband will tell you that. So I'm just taking a Q-tip and some water and just cleaning up any of those small areas where I went over the stencil a little too far. Now, of course, if you're making one of these, you don't have to put the plant names on there. You can leave it blank. You could put something else entirely on it. You could put different plant names. It's totally up to you. It's very customizable. So once I finish getting all of the run over cleaned up, I take my polyacrylic spray and I spray down where I stenciled on the words. The reason I do it this way is because I find sometimes when it comes to chalk paint, if I just start going over it with polyacrylic and like a brush, sometimes it can smear the paint a little bit. So I just find personally that doing the spray first and then sealing with the thick coat of polyacrylic seems to work better for me. So once all of that is dry, I'm gonna go ahead and attach my box to the bottom. I'm just using these, they're little like 1x1s cut down to size, and basically using those as corner braces so that we can attach the box to the bottom. Now, the side pieces of this box do have an angle. It's not a specific angle because, again, every pallet is different. The angle that you choose to lean your pallet at is going to change the angle of those pieces. So again, honestly, what we do is we just hold the piece up and mark it with a pencil so that we know what angle we need to cut them at. So I'm just using 4 screws in each corner to hold everything in place. So basically, I'm just drilling my pilot holes. I find the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and attach the side pieces to the pallet, and then attach your corner braces to your front piece before you attach those brace pieces to the side pieces. Hopefully that makes sense and you can just see what I'm doing. That was the easiest way I found to do it because the screw gun doesn't quite fit inside the box very well. So attaching them this way was the best way to get all the pieces in with a pretty secure hold without having to use, like, you know, a screwdriver instead of my screw gun. So that's just the easiest way I found to do it. So you can see here that the corner pieces are attached to the front, and now I'm just drilling the pilot holes into the side. Of course, I feel like it's implied, but I'll go ahead and tell you anyway that of course you want to stagger your screws so that you're not trying to drill a screw into a screw that's already there. So that's all I'm doing is just pre-drilling and adding my screws to attach that front piece to the side pieces. Okay, so now that all the building is done, here's where it starts to get a little bit tedious. So you're gonna need some sort of thick wire. I use an electric staple gun, and then I also use some really heavy duty wire cutters. And again, the size of this wire that you're cutting is gonna be dependent on the pallet. So you just kind of wanna measure it. Mine most often was 3 rows by about 4 or 5 rows, depending on how long. Now, the biggest thing is that you don't want your metal pieces, your wire, to be sticking out of the bottom of your box, so to speak. So when you stand back, you don't want to see the wire, like where I'm stapling it here. You don't want to see the wire sticking out of the bottom, so you don't want to make the wire too big. But the best way I found to be able to attach it was staple it to the back on the inside and then staple it to the front. And then I have my hammer here to go ahead and tap in any of the staples that didn't get quite all the way through. And then also for the ones that are right there on the top, I leave a little bit of the wire out, and after I hammer the nail in, I bend those posts back over and hammer them flat. So I'm trying to show you here what I'm talking about, but this is essentially what you want your baskets to look like. And for this particular part, don't worry if it doesn't look pretty or you're not happy with the amount of staples that you use, anything like that, because that's gonna get covered up and you're not gonna see it. So I'm just showing you here, this is what they look like. I'm trying to, show you from the inside. This is what each one should look like. Now, the reason we're doing it this way is because it's a planter, you want it to have good drainage, so you don't really want to have a piece of wood in there. Then what we're gonna do is add some weed barrier. I get these particular ones from the dollar store. We do have a giant roll of weed barrier because I do a lot of gardening, but it's just a pain in the butt to drag the whole roll out for something like this. So you can get these individual smaller sized ones at the dollar store for $1. I ended up only needing one of these, but I do fold them over, make sure it's a double layer of the weed barrier. And then what you're gonna do is make a clean edge, take your staple gun, and you're just gonna go ahead and add a few staples in. You want it to be secure, but you do want this to be the cleaner look that you're going for. So I'm just stapling it to the back first, and then I measure, cut off whatever I need to, if I need to cut anything off, fold over again and make another clean edge, and then just staple that right to the top. And we'll go back and cover up those staples too, but this is where we're gonna get that cleaner look from, but this is also gonna hold in our soil once we add the soil to the planter. Now, as far as the sides go, you're just kind of sort of going to be folding this in like a present, the reverse of a present. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but essentially you want to fold it over, make it as clean as you can, clean edges, but make sure that you secure it really well. You don't want to leave any gaps where your soil is going to be falling through. And again, if there's any staples that didn't completely go in, we're going to go ahead and tap those in with a hammer. Once you get everything added, I just take a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, and go through and color over any of the exposed staples. And this just helps it to blend in a little bit better. You can use black paint if you would like, but I'm not that worried about it. I know that eventually the plants will cover all of this and you're not going to see them anyway. There's my pretty princess. She had to be in the shot, so please excuse her while she Vanna White displays our planter here. But once you finish covering up the staples with the Sharpie, that's it. That's the end of it. You can add hooks to the sides, the front. You can add a decorative piece to the top of the back. Anywhere you'd like to add that. It's entirely up to you how you want to customize this. It completely, honestly, if I had enough time, I would have made a ton of these already because they're really not that time consuming to make. And they're extremely customizable, and I just love the rustic look that it gives. They're great container gardens for small spaces, which is why I made one for my mother. So yeah, anyway, I hope that you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to give it a big thumbs up. And if you guys make any of these and you want to show me, we do have an Instagram, Susie Jane Designs. I will go ahead and link that down below, and you guys can tag us in that. Thanks so much, guys.
That's it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that it wasn't too painful for those of you that actually do build. Because, yeah. If you liked this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below and the notification bell next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video, which I am trying to be better at, guys. Anyway, until next time, I'll be seeing you.